So you've just bought a Code paddle and you want to know what height to put it at, but also how to put it together. Now, height is really personal preference, and I always recommend people to start a little bit taller than shorter. You can always cut more off, so don't be too worried about that. In terms of height, the old school method was put your hand up and have the paddle up about here, but that's definitely not the way to do it now. At the most I say now is a hand span above your head. That's the most I would ever go. Now, for me personally, I go closer to head height, like a fist above head height. Somewhere between that is the best way to start. Some people go as low as head height, some people go as high as hand span, but it does also depend on the volume of your board, so many personal preferences, length of your arms, etc. So, as I said, start a little longer, hand span at the most, fist, and you get down to head height. When you're cutting your paddle, can't stress enough, you should always go a little bit longer because you can always cut a little bit more off. If you go too short, you can't put it back on. So the Code paddle comes with a shaft and a blade. The handle is attached to the shaft. You don't have to worry about that end. We're just worrying about the other end. So as it comes out of the box, it's suited for really tall people. Now, I'm not really tall. I'm about 5'10", 178. And this, as it comes out of the box, is way too tall for me. So I need to cut it shorter, and I know that I like it at about a hand span to a fist above my head. Now I'm going to cut it to a hand span. How do I measure that up? So I've got the paddle on the ground. I'm going to take the paddle out of the top because it's too tall, and I'm going to get it to the height that suits me. Now, I've got to get a little bit of tape that I can use to sort of measure where that is and make a marker, but measure twice, cut once. And we can see here, the tape down, that right now it is about a hand span above my head, which is, I like it a bit shorter than most people, but hand span's where I always recommend people to start. So just double check, there's our hand span, pretty much. And I'm going to put the tape where the lip of the blade is up against the shaft. Okay, so that's how much I'm going to cut off. Now, you can see that. I'm going to get my hacksaw, you can use a grinder, and you can then cut that off. And now it's that. Perfect. Okay, so now I've cut it off, cut that little bit off. I'm now going to double check that my height's right. I don't want to glue it without being the right height, so I'm putting it in and just triple checking. Hand span, yeah, we're good. So it's the height that I wanted it at, and I'm happy with that. So what I have to do now is I've got to rough up the male part of the blade and the female part of the shaft. So sandpaper, and you don't worry too much about this, but you just want to give it like a quick sort of rub on the inside and then a rub on the outside here as well. Use coarse sandpaper because that's going to mean you don't have to work too hard. If you're using really fine grit, you got to do more of it. That's coarse, so we're good to go. The only thing we really have to worry about now is make sure it's square, like with the handle. Now, seems a little bit obvious, but if you put your hand on the handle, you'll understand which way it's supposed to go. It should fit in the palm of your hand pretty nicely. It shouldn't fit like that. It should be smooth, and you can sort of round your hand over it. So when we're lining it up, we're going to make sure that's square. So again, it doesn't matter right now, but it's going to double check. So that's the way I want it to be, and you can see the blade is towards me. It's not away from me. It's going to make sure that lines up with the part on the handle that you want to hold. So we're then going to mix up. I use Araldite because once I know the height that I like. So this is just you get from Bunnings or a warehouse, a hardware store. You can get 5-minute epoxy is the best. This one's a little bit stronger, but because I'm comfortable with the height, it's all good. So you can also use hot glue. Now, if you're not confident with your height, you're probably better off using hot glue because hot glue is much easier to disassemble This is pretty permanent and you need a pretty high grade heat gun. You can't just use a blow dry, you gotta use a heat gun to get this stuff off. So unless you're positive, this is what you want. This is better long run if you know your height because it won't get too hot and melt in a car. This, as I said, needs a heat gun to get off. So if I'm in Hawaii or Perth and I've only used hot glue, I'll actually take my paddle apart and put Araldite or 5-minute epoxy on. The epoxy holds much better in places like Perth, places like Hawaii. You leave your paddle in the car in the middle of the day and it's actually going to twist. By the time you get in the water, you won't know, and it's off 5 degrees. And now your paddle's crooked and you're mid-run, and it's going to be really annoying. So if you are going to a hot location, you've only used hot glue, take it apart with a blow dryer and put your 5-minute epoxy or your Araldite to make it basically permanent. Not fully permanent, but a hot day is not going to take it apart. So I'm doing it permanent because I know the height I like. Do you want me to talk it through?
Nah, this is all just like, you've already talked it through.
No. Yeah, so now you've got your glue mixed up. You've sanded it back, both here on the outside, male part, and the female part in the shaft. And you just want to make sure, look, you're better off doing too much rather than not enough. So, and I always start at the bottom and you just want to go around to start with. Now, if you don't use enough, what happens is you're going to get a leak and there's going to be water in your paddle, which is really annoying. There's a few ways we can avoid that just using tape once it's all glued, but basically more is more in this scenario, and you can always clean it up. And just sort of along like that. It's all going to be pushing up as well, along. Just make sure you have those big goopy bits all spread out. And really it's all going to be pushed up to the end and it's going to sort of overflow, I guess. So just want to make sure there's more on there so you prevent those leaks. A little bit of water in there is annoying. Yep. So you can see we've got our glue on the male part of the paddle, and we're now going to, don't worry about positioning or orientation of the blade just yet, we can move it once it's in there. We're just going to put it in, and as it goes on you can see it kind of builds up on the shaft. So I'll sort of pull it back, and you can also grab your stick and just sort of put it back onto, like push it up onto the male part. You don't want it overflowing onto the, too much overflowing onto the outside of the shaft. And you can see how more is better than not enough. Give it a bit of a twist so it all sort of gets in there. And now we're going to double check the orientation. So you can see right now it's actually back to front and it's twisted. So I need to twist it around. See, it's still a bit on the piece. So I've got, and I like to put it along like this and you sort of look straight down, and I still got to twist it a little bit more. Yeah. 99% there. Yep, happy with that. So that's on, and the glue's slowly setting. Because this is like a stronger Araldite, it takes more than 5 minutes. If you're using a 5-minute Araldite, it's you're sort of on the clock. We're not on the clock, we can get this as clean as we want. But you're gonna sort of paste it over it, sort of make sure that covers the join. And don't worry too much, well, I don't worry too much about the looks because I'm gonna put black tape over the top of it anyway. I prefer to have a little bit too much than not enough, just to prevent that water getting in. So I'm just going to triple check my height. So I got my sort of handspan, fist sort of realm. That's where I wanted it. And double check the handle. Yep, perfect. So I'm happy with that, I'm not going to move it, and the tape's going to basically allow it to stay in place whilst it sets. So make it as clean as you can. Putting it on there. Straight. Wrap all the way around. Butchered it. Just gonna smooth it out and let that set. But we're now good to go for our paddle with the height that we want. We went a little bit longer than we would normally like because we can always cut it shorter. But yeah, that's how we set our Code Foils paddle up. Now that your paddle's all set up to your desired height, you can then get out there. Now, a few tips whilst you are getting out there. Definitely think about keeping your paddle nose to toes, not toes to tail. If you're going to get your paddle out in front, you're going to get more power. You're also going to avoid any paddle strikes. Secondly, if you're feeling pain in your shoulder, you've cut your paddle or your paddle shaft too long. You want to make that a little bit shorter. If you feel pain in your lower back, you've actually cut your paddle too short and you can't make it any longer. The only way you're going to make that better is bend your knees a little bit more. So a couple tips there for your paddling and paddling journey, but look forward to seeing you out there.